Welcome again, guys, to the Jesse Means Movie News and Review Show, where we touch on things such as movies and a little bit of TV. So today I'm covering the Star Wars spoiler review. So that's what we're going to have today. I wanted to give it a little bit of time for other people to actually watch it. I know it's been a little bit longer than normal. Typically, a lot of people expect you to wait, 3 days, 2 days. But due to the holiday season, I decided, you know what, we give more people time before actually going and creating a video and not giving people a chance to actually watch the film. Don't want to ruin it for anyone. So let me start with, and first of all, I'm glad you guys are here today. I love Star Wars. I guess you could tell by my first video, even though I didn't want to give too much away. So let me just start by saying this to you. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. It's not going to be focused on what other people think or to please other people. I'm hoping that you just enjoy my thoughts, my opinions, and hopefully you guys are like-minded. So to start with, I'm going to say this. Like I said before, I loved the film. I thought it was fantastic. Looking at the time that, well, really comparing it to The Last Jedi, and, I'm not going to bash the film. There were a lot of things in it that were really good. There were some things that were lacking. But with the little bit, in my opinion, from what J.J. Abrams had to work with, yeah, you may say there was a lot of, how should you say, trying to really give the public a lot of information that, they hadn't seen, really cramming a lot of information together, a lot of fanfare, and for me, I totally understand why. After seeing the last film, I remember when I watched it, and a lot of people didn't care for it, even though I understand it had a lot of great reviews. I understand that some people thought that it was different, and that's what they enjoyed about it a lot. For me, it was lacking in a lot of areas, but it was really awesome on a couple of things. A different take on Luke Skywalker, even though it should have been a little bit more focused on the Luke Skywalker that we knew. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. I also want to say this as well. These movies begin in 1977. I enjoyed those. Those are the original trilogies. Most of you guys, well, I mean, all of us, that's why we love Star Wars, because of those first three films. My favorite, obviously, is The Empire Strikes Back. But I do have to say this. Those films, if people expect those qualities, I mean, they were new, they were original. It's something that we had never seen before. To sustain itself, especially, I understand the prequels, and a lot of people have grown to have a much better appreciation for it. But to expect that type of sustainability over this long haul, a period of time, I think it's a little, and I mean this respectfully, this is just my opinion, unrealistic. The prequels were awesome. and I'm going to get to The Last Jedi in a minute, but the prequels were awesome in terms of the new technology, things we hadn't seen before. A lot of that's, a lot of the technology, some of the visuals are still astonishing. They even hold up until today. Uh, Type of technology. I mean, still not as quite as good, but I mean, you can see how he had actually created something we had never seen before, just like he did in the other original trilogy, except for, you know, the character development, and that's a entirely different subject when it comes to George Lucas. But I'm not a basher on him. I mean, he shaped the entire world of, for me, of science fiction. But J.J. Abrams had to do something. He had to get as much into these films as he possibly could. And he did that with the Force Awakens, and he also did it in this film as well. He had to give us what we wanted, his version of that. You could tell he was fully aware, and I mean, he's tied into it, but fully aware of whether it's the Clone Wars, or if it was, or if it's, you know, the Mandalorian, which is just not very much, but pretty much he was in tune to everything. So he, and even the legends, if you want to call it that. Now, which they still are, but the legends, and so a lot of the other animated series that were like Rebels, he really put a lot of that into this film to try to give us as much as we could, because we lost a lot. And so in terms of The Last Jedi, and I also want to tell you the things that I loved about the film. Daisy Ridley, I really loved the power that she had. I mean, you could see the growth in the character. You could see that her power had, I mean, significantly increased. I mean, to see her, you know, flip over the water at the height that she had done it, for her to be, you know, at the very beginning when she's hovering and having the rocks surround her, and she's working on trying to have the Jedi to speak to her, which, you know, in the end was very significant, as you all know. I thought that was amazing. And then to have Leia to be considered her master, I thought that was great, using the little bit of technology that they had, not technology, but excuse me, the little bit of footage that they had available to them from the previous film. As I mentioned before, John Boyega, he had mentioned before how he made the character more so about basically being like him, instead of he actually acting out the character himself. And you could see that he was a more relaxed character. I liked how he took a lot more authority, as we all saw, which was, I mean, immediately I didn't get it, but after a while I did, how you come to find out he's force sensitive. And I thought that was awesome. I also enjoyed Kylo Ren. Adam Driver was phenomenal. You could tell he was to me, he was a almost direct reflection of Anakin Skywalker. And I know some people may agree with that, some people may disagree, but he was almost a complete reflection of it. And I'm going to tell you exactly why in just a minute. But his you know, when you saw in Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin said, you know, my powers have doubled, when he was talking to Count Dooku, well, you could definitely see that Kylo Ren's power had absolutely doubled or tripled. Uh, Ray was awesome when they fought on the Death Star, even the prior battle. But he, I mean, he simply overpowered her. It was very surprising. But also, you have to remember if when watching her, which I thought, I mean, I never expected when she and Kylo Ren were trying to bring the shuttle down because Rey thought that Chewbacca was in it, and she used the lightning force. I believe he knew there was some untapped energy that he didn't possess, and she had not fully reached her potential with it. I thought that was great. He had a lot of substance to his character that, I mean, everyone loves Kylo Ren, but there was a lot more depth. And Adam Driver is a great actor, but there was a lot of depth to this character this time. Excuse me. Mark Hamill, I really like the fact that when Ray went to Octu and decided, I'm going to be just like Luke. I'm going to throw away my lightsaber. I'm going to destroy the shuttle that I came into or arrived to the planet with, and be just like you. And she literally, almost virtually, said the exact same words. And then lastly, after throwing a couple of pieces of wood at it, which I was kind of like, it's already burning. but she threw the lightsaber. And what I thought was amazing about it is that all of a sudden, out of the blue, here comes Luke Skywalker, who basically caught the lightsaber that she threw, which was his and his father before him. He said, a Jedi's weapon should be treated or respected a lot more, hinting to him receiving it from Rey in The Force Awakens and throw it. No, the Last of the Jedi, or basically both, but really the Last Jedi, and throwing it over his shoulder like, huh. And so I thought that was really cool. His presence was quite strong. He went back and he told her she has everything that she needs, and if she doesn't go back, it will be the end of the Jedi. JJ went back and reflected and showed, which I thought was really really cool when he lifted his old TIE fighter out of the water, just like Yoda did, gave her a smile, like he had told her, you have everything you need, just like Leia stated to her before. I believe it was in the Last Jedi as well, at the end of the film. And I thought that was really cool. They didn't overplay his role, but it was significant to me. Oscar Isaac, I thought he was good. He kind of played a little bit more of a Han Solo role, but what I did like and enjoy was he identified that Rey was the better pilot. He and Finn had an even closer bond, but his attitude was more so of, it's involving Rey, we need you. And I was surprised when he virtually said, you're the best pilot. You're better than I am. We need you out there than here, training. I thought that was great. After a few scenes, and especially after Leia died, he realized after Billy D. Williams, Lando, that it does take teamwork, that he became vulnerable. I don't know what to do. And Billy D. Williams, I'm sorry, it's Billy D. Williams. He really let him know what it took. It took a team. It took all of them. they didn't know what to do, but they worked together. I mean, there was just, I hate to say it, sounds a little corny, but it took hope. Um, and I got this from this movie. It was fast paced. There was never a dull moment, but it was completely worth it. Yes, there were some parts that was you kind of question a little bit, like hey, why this doesn't fit, but all the other things that were in it, all the events that took place, some of the things I mentioned before, they overshadow all of that. And like I mentioned with Billy D. Williams, his screen time, he was one of the few people that I thought had the perfect amount of screen time. Uh, kind of did a replay of what what Leia did with the uniform, trying to, help the rebels out. Said, his flying days are over. And then you come back later on, and he has what virtually the same type of outfit that was in the Solo film with that version of Lando, and I thought that was really cool. And then to come to find out later on, he ends up piloting the Millennium Falcon with Chewbacca. I thought that was awesome. Kerry Russell was in the film. She for her role that she played, she was really awesome. She really gave, I guess, a different texture to the film. It wasn't just the same old person, the same old character. She gave, I wouldn't call it emotion, but you could see that there was an attachment with Poe. Instead of it being a case where, it appeared, a lot of people thought that, there was going to be something that was going to take place between Poe and Daisy Ridley. And it ended up being a total opposite of that. Anthony Daniels was really good, playing C-3PO. The reason why I really enjoyed him in this movie was because I know he's a robot, I know he's funny, and he did have a lot of funny moments. The entire movie, the jokes, they hit the right beat. It reminded me, for me, the original film, the first, 4, 5, and 6. And then I have to go ahead and move on to the other part that people have always been discussing and are really talking about, and that is the Emperor Palpatine. For him to say that he created Snoke, that he's been communicating, because Snoke was his puppet, basically. Obviously you can tell after watching the film that he's a clone, from my understanding. And to tell Kylo Ren, basically, hey, I'm every voice that you've heard. And then to hear each of those voices, from Snoke to Vader, that's astonishing. That was really cool to understand he had that much power. And I'm going to get to the end of what I thought, basically my opinion of what happened at the end and my opinion on it. And then Kelly, I believe it's Kelly and Tran, I was disappointed. And the reason why is because I understand everyone has an opinion about her. They don't really enjoy the fact of her relationship with Poe. I'm sorry, not Poe, but Finn in the prior film. But I think she deserved a lot more, at least a few, no, I'm going to just say it, a few more minutes of screen time, and maybe a lot more. I think they did a little bit of an injustice, You know, you may frown on that, but you know, she doesn't write the scripts, and she had no impact on the first film. I mean, on the Last Jedi, and this one, this film, The Rise of Skywalker. I think they could have done a lot more with her. I think she deserved more. That's my opinion about it. When it came down to the very end, what I really, really enjoyed was after the fight between Rey and Kylo. I mean, it took Leia to basically stop Kylo Ren from either killing her, Rey that is, or to take her, for Kylo to take her to Snoke, if that's what he was going to do. And at that point, Rey took Kylo's lightsaber and stabbed him. And to me, this was so beautiful and poetic. After doing that, she realized what happened. It took everything that Leia had left in her. And so she died after that. And so, well, no, that was later. And so no, it was at that moment, excuse me. So at that point, you know, Kylo was basically dying. And Rey used her Force abilities to heal him. Well, after she had done that, she said to Kylo, yes, I did want to take your hand, but it was Ben's hand that I wanted to take, not Kylo's. And he was taken back by it. But he didn't, and that's what I loved about Adam Driver. He didn't overact the scene. He subtly looked like, wow, okay. I guess the lightsaber and his mom really kind of turned his whole spirit in terms of him kind of opening back up to the light side. But it was like he just took a pause, like, you know, this is what's separating us. That's what separated us. Was just you just wanted me, not the power. So after that, you know, when they get to Palpatine, after she's lured there because she's very upset because her dad and mom were basically killed by Palpatine. Not himself individually, but by, you know, another vice, another individual. You know, he basically tells her, hey, listen, I'm going to give you all of my power. But really what he was saying is, I'm going to enter you. We're going to join each other, because he revealed that you're my granddaughter. She had heard it before through Kylo Ren, but he affirmed it. And, you know, the thing is that she resisted. She did not want to bend to it. And then Palpatine being Palpatine, like you've seen Return of the Jedi, he opens up this huge ceiling. I mean, I can't really express it. It's like being in a huge symphony hall, just huge and enormous, and just cracking it open. It's not just looking through, you know, some glass with barriers that keep it secure. I mean, it opens up, and he starts to tempt her like he attempted to tempt Luke. But the difference is that she said, okay, I'll do it, but I don't want my friends to die. Because he basically said, you know, you lured them all here. They're here because of you. So after she agreed, you see Kylo Ren racing through. I mean, you know, you can see he had absolute purpose. He was there to help her. He runs into the Knights of Ren, force pushing them, but they get the upper hand. And what I didn't tell you is that Rey was given uh, Leia's lightsaber. Come to find out that Luke and Leia had training. I mean, she was a full-fledged Jedi, uh, from what I perceived from it. And actually, during the film, she actually kind of had the upper hand. Well, she did. I mean, she knocked Luke basically on his butt uh, to the ground. And after she sensed something was going to happen with her son, she stated basically, and this is through Luke's words, that someone else will be using it. They'll use it. It'll be used again. I'm not going to use my saber again. And so Luke gives it to her, tells him to take both of those to where Palpatine is. And so during that fight between Adam Driver and the Knights of Ren, Rey pulls her lightsaber up because, like I said, I'm sorry being so animated, but it was just that impactful. It was that cool, really. He basically says to her, strike me down and we'll be joined. It's in your blood. You are to be the empress of the empire. And you can tell basically he just wants to take over her body. It's pretty obvious. And so after that, she raises her lightsaber, and she and Kylo, with that bond that they have, she basically sends the lightsaber to him, and he just tears apart the Knights of Ren. He races back to try to help her. Well, the Emperor sucks the life force out of them, and he starts to regenerate. Well, he does it a little bit prior to that, but to the extent in which he did, where he's almost completely revived. So after that happens, his fingers were like decrepit, missing. Something. When he fell from the Death Star, he was really injured. Like he said, "I've died before." That's something he said in the film. And so after he had sucked the life force out of both of them, or at least a vast majority of it, Rey's on the ground, Kylo gets up, and basically the Emperor's like, you know what, this is it. This is the end of the Skywalkers. Just as I've fallen, like I fell, like when he fell to the Death Star, so shall you. So he forced him through this huge hole. Well, I don't know if you've seen the comic, but that's one thing that Snoke had taught Kylo, was that in terms of his fear and what have you, that if you're tossed over a large area and you use your hate and your fear, you can brace yourself and hover. Which we've kind of seen in other things too, just used in different ways in other films with the Jedi. And so after that, Rey calls out, like she did in the very beginning of the movie, and basically asks the Jedi to help her, to come to me. And they did. Yoda, Anakin, I think I heard Leia. There were a couple of other voices that I didn't recognize. I heard Mace Windu. And so she did. She got up, rose with the little bit of power that she had, used the lightsaber of Anakin Skywalker and Luke, and started to, because the Emperor started shooting his lightning towards her, she was able to defend it. And then she drew the Leia lightsaber and just started forcing herself towards him. And unlike Mace Windu and how it deformed him, if you really want to call it to say that it deformed him or that was his true likeness, it just he was. I mean, disintegrate is not the answer, but I mean the correct term. But he was. I mean, he burnt. I mean, he was basically left with nothing. There was nothing left of him. And then she died. Now, this is the parallel that I have thought of. You may not agree with me, but if you remember, Anakin's whole purpose after having these dreams that I believe that Palpatine put into his mind, he wanted to save Padme from death. So what he, that was his whole goal. And just as Palpatine said to him, speaking of Plagueis the Wise, and how they were in the opera house, and how he, could, well, not at that point, but later on, explain to him in his office that he could help him discover the way to save Padme. And so, and in the end, Kylo Ren is alive, Rey's dead. And he uses his life force. He did the very thing that Anakin wanted to do, which was to save the woman that he loved. She woke up, she rose, and was stunned. I mean, it was all over her, in her eyes, in her face, in her expression, and they kissed. And he was happy. You could tell he was at peace. And then he kind of gradually laid down and became a Force ghost. And I thought that was really awesome. It was a great film. I really liked it. And I hope you guys get to check it out. It's a great film, guys. We don't have to be so dogmatic about it. Yes, there's some things, like I thought that she shouldn't have been able to kill Palpatine so quickly just by using another lightsaber to push him back. And, he could have just stopped using the lightning. I mean, but those things, like I said, everything else was so superb over that. Those things are small. Those films are made to be enjoyed, not to bash. Just like The Last Jedi, it wasn't my favorite film, but it did bring you some different things that we haven't seen, a different type of Star Wars movie. So I hope you guys enjoy the review. I hope you guys have seen it. And not only Star Wars, don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars, but obviously this is the end of the Star Wars saga, and I'm sorry, not Star Wars, but the Skywalker saga, and we'll be discussing a lot of other movies, okay, guys? So please continue to subscribe, hit a like. I'd really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you soon.